talk about. So I was just on YouTube, like trolling Becky's
Yeah.
and Karen's, and there's so many videos. I didn't want to add the the racist ones against Latin people because that made me upset.
It triggered you.
But there were a lot of them about like that did not even the man. Did you see the one? I think it was in Nevada. The white guy in the wheelchair, the veteran, that he is like cursing out this Puerto Rican family. Like what? Like speak English. Like and
Wow.
this guy is speaking Spanish to his mom. He's not even speaking like out
Yeah,
loud.
it's just
And he's like
mind your
speak English,
business.
and the guy's like, I'm a veteran too. He goes, I don't give a fuck if you're
Then
a
because
veteran.
not nobody ever cares
He's
if you're
like,
a
I don't
veteran. It's
give
a
a fuck
fallacy.
if you're a veteran.
Yeah, and
He's
meanwhile,
like,
that's his
speak.
spiel, right?
He's like, speak fucking English. It's America.
Yeah.
And so like that one is wild. Or the one, the Arizona chick that is the white chick that's fucking with like the either she's Latinx or Native American.
Yeah, yeah, telling her to go back, and
So
she's
she's
like,
like,
"I'm American."
she's not American, bitch. She goes, where the fuck are
Yeah,
you from,
no,
bitch?
for real, for real. I was with her the whole time. I was just like, pop off, be upset,
What?
be pissed off
So
right now.
I was like all of last night and the other night before I was just looking up and there's so many videos about this. And it's like I think it's a good topic to talk about like white women in the US.
Yeah, I mean, this whole like, not phenomenon, but Karen, like this name for this individual that is always meddling in business that they don't need to be meddling in.
Yeah.
And it's always like a racist overtone. So it's not just like harmless, like, oh, like,
Mhm.
it's never that way. Um, and I think that comes from like this assumed role that they have, specifically in this country. You know, kind of like they're oppressed,
Yes.
but a very heavy but.
Mhm. Yeah.
They also benefit from,
The racial
standing
caste system that
absolutely
exists.
and standing on that side as opposed to standing on the side of true femininity and
Yeah.
feminism, excuse me, and being all for women's rights. It's a very interesting space that they dominate.
Yeah.
Um,
And the I guess and also though it's I think it's the system we live in that they're they could be like rah feminists, right? And they have their right and yes, the white women have experienced trauma in this country. But I think when push comes to shove, the race card always trumps the gender card.
yeah, of
And I
course.
think that's something that's very unique to them.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I don't think they recognize their privilege in that sense. And what that means and what does this I'm curious to see if this white woman exists in other countries because
Mm.
I do think this after seeing so many videos, it is the same. It's like there's
It's the
a
same.
factory.
It's a clone.
That,
That's why there's a name for these
it's
kinds
like
of people.
a factory that produces the same fucking
Mm-hmm.
white woman.
Yeah.
And they could be the wokest and the most progressive, but in
Well,
these
that's a facade.
situations, but no, in these situations, then they apologize, and the apology is worse. Like all these women apologize, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like, "Oh my God, I just was like out of control, and my racist Tourette's just
Yeah.
like
Kicked in at that moment
kicked
because I
in.
just had no other choice.
I just didn't know what to
Yeah.
do, and like
Yeah, that's like
I have no control over this, but like my racial Tourette's kicked in, and I'm sorry, this is not me. I love everyone. This is great.
yeah.
And it's like
Or their
it's,
husband
oh,
comes on camera, like the woman who was harassing that lady in the gas station, telling her she's not from here and she needs to get out or do whatever.
yeah.
And then her husband comes days later and it's like it's her undiagnosed mental illness.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's racism. It is a disease, but a different kind.
It is, yeah, no, it's a real disease. No, and it's just interesting, and I wonder if, like, when I was watching all these videos, if these type of women exist in Europe and like other parts. I mean, I'm sure they do because I do think this is a product of the systems that we live in,
Oh,
and I
absolutely.
think it's a product of how racialized our societies are. But it is a unique. I think these type of people should be studied because it's so unique. Because I call them like unnecessary meddlers because they're like the overseers. Like they feel like they're the overseers. Like this is their plantation, and
Well,
they're just watching, like making sure that you're behaving properly. that things are going the way that
they think it
should
should be. It's
be.
like you have absolutely no authority. This isn't your job. You're not an employee of this building.
But
You live
they
here.
think it's their job.
Yeah, but it also defies all
It's
logic
their
too. Is the
job.
thing. Like for example, that woman, the building,
Yeah.
what's her
Building
name?
Becky.
Building Becky is what
Building
she's been. I
Becky.
mean, we didn't name her. This is YouTube.
She's Building Becky.
But Building Becky, she decides that this man doesn't live here,
Yeah.
and then will claim that she's scared afterwards.
She
That's
was
why I said it
terrified.
defies logic because
She
she
was
followed
terrified.
him all the way to his door and
Yeah.
then was like, "Well, I just want to know your name."
Yeah, she's
Like,
like,
can we?
well, can we be? We're neighbors.
Yeah.
Can we be friends?
Yeah, I'm like, no,
And he's
you
like,
just
no.
harassed me, you
Yeah.
psychopath.
Yeah,
Like, you
exactly.
horrible
You
person.
literally followed me with your dog to my apartment, like seriously, and were like saying outrageous things
Yeah.
to me about like, who are you visiting?
And
here?
then going on Fox News, local Fox News afterwards and being like, there was a different story that played out after she apologized. So there's like a whole bunch of this backtracking
Yeah.
and just like, but it's interesting. You're like the overseer. It's like,
Yeah.
what has their role been historically in this country? Where,
I mean, right next to white men. I mean,
right,
that's where
but
their
right
role
under
is.
the thumb of too, because
Yeah, they're right
like,
under
you know,
there, but they're comfortable with it, and
absolutely.
they don't.
Well, they benefit from it.
But they
totally.
also don't challenge it when they need to. That's the problem. You know, that is the problem, is that they don't challenge it because again, they recognize their privilege in it, and they don't want to ruffle any feathers and change that. You know, in some capacity.
Yeah, absolutely, because they benefit from the system. They're reaping, you know, by being with their oppressor. They're still getting more than anybody else.
But also
Yeah.
this, I mean, we also talked about the Sharon Osbourne reaction to Pierce Morgan.
That's true.
And
There,
all these things.
Yeah.
About like this burden of educating them, and this burden of like, teach me, tell me, I don't know, I don't see color, or I don't understand this racial stuff. It's like, at what point is it like, why do we have to teach you everything? Like, why can't you teach? Like, these people are educated, these people have privilege, these people have access and resources. Like, why are we having the burden of like educating you on it? Because we're experiencing these traumas and experiencing these racial experience, and then on top of that, educating you. Like, I thought what she did on TV was ridiculous.
Yeah, as a result of you benefiting off of the system too. But that I mean that's their whole thing. It's like I don't know, she just there's this it is that privilege, but it's also like the fragility that comes in there too because it's like I can't handle you telling me to be accountable.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, they don't have to be.
well, no, because the system rewards them not being accountable.
Yeah. I mean, it benefits. It benefits from us being ignorant to race and say, like, because even how the news talks about topics like that, like where you're talking about this Building Becky, the way they said the other side of the story.
Yeah, there's no other side. It's recorded.
If there's another side, but also they completely negate the fact, would she have done that if it was a white guy? Or a white woman, or or an Asian. Like, there's so many things that there's factors that because racism, it's not so, like, we can't. It's not so tangible. It's in everything. It's in the air we breathe. That they use the media to say, like, the other side. What other side? Like, you're not the building manager. If you felt so threatened, call the police. If you felt so threatened, right? Or call the property manager, or call there's a fucking super.
That's what I'm saying. It
Call
defies logic.
super.
It's like, if I was scared of somebody, there's no way that I would follow them to where they live.
But then again, also, maybe it's different because we're in New York. Like, in New York, no one gives a fuck who's coming in and out of your building. Like, that's like, that's why our doors have 5 lock. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
I would never, I mean, I find that really hard to exist in New York, this situation. Maybe in a luxury building.
Yeah, I'm thinking definitely in a luxury
Maybe.
building, you will experience this type of
Maybe.
discrimination and people wondering if you belong there. But
someone following you in New York?
No,
I don't know
mean
about
like
that one.
the following part, because again, this defies like self-preservation. Like if you were truly under threat, or just like I wouldn't do that to anybody, even if I didn't think that they were they were threatening. It doesn't make any sense.
But I think that too, like watching Because when we were talking about this topic, we had some examples, and I think that was one that her crying and then telling the black chick you can't cry, or
Oh,
this chick,
Sharon, yeah,
and
Sharon.
then yeah, Sharon up, and then
Mm.
asking like, tell me what is so racist, and like that they can't.
Well,
They claim that
it's
they're
an
so intelligent,
excuse.
but then they can't. They like tell me what he said was racist. And no,
Hmm.
did he say blatantly, "Oh, I'm racist," or this black
As
bitch or
if that's how it
whatever?
works.
He didn't say that, but what he said was racially driven, and like the fact, like to negate that, or then say how the other white woman was like, oh well, he's a loyalist to what? To an oppressed crown? Like these
Yeah.
people are rich
Well, that part
on the
is never
base of
examined.
racism and all this bullshit. So what loyalist to who? This is bullshit. Like that's where I'm saying like
But
these
it's
discussions have to, like we gotta like cut through the bullshit because who gives a fuck about the British
well,
crown?
I agree. Like loyalist to what? Like
Yeah, to racism
oppression,
and
to
fucking
racism,
yeah,
to a system that,
colonialism.
yeah,
That's what the
yeah.
loyalty is.
Because what does it mean?
What does it mean to be a loyalist? To what crown? What does that benefit you? I don't even understand that concept in the United Kingdom. Like you're a loyalist to the crown. What is the crown doing for you? But perpetuating your white supremacy that because the United Kingdom already thinks it's like this, like
Elites, the
um the um the United Kingdom already thinks like they're this like elite place that like
or the standard. I think that's what it is when they're called into question. White people are the standard in this country.
yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting how this country was how it manifests race because it's in the air we breathe here and it's a part of everything we do.
Yeah.
But also they have this like eagerness to maintain this legacy, and
Mm.
I don't get it. Even the way the US goes crazy about the royal family.
Hmm.
Like this baby being born in California. That's big news right now. A royal being born here. And it's like we really shouldn't be idolizing this family that like I mean
Well, yeah,
they're
as the United States of America.
but in general nowhere in the world because these royal families, these monarchs are like the slave owners. You know what I mean? They're the same people. It's the same thing as these rich southern people who are like generationally wealthy, right?
Hmm.
It's the same concept. Like all your wealth is stolen and like through exploitation and through violence and murder. Why are we supporting you but then we're
But the
putting
system has to support that in order to.
yeah, but then we put people in prison for doing
Mm.
illegal things, right? But these families acquire their wealth illegally, and they are criminals themselves. I mean, they're criminals. I mean, like I was like with the other episodes we talked about. They've become rich because someone in the family was like, "I'm king now, and
Yeah.
you listen to me, or I will kill you."
Yeah,
And
well, I
now,
mean, it's based off of violence. That's where it comes from. It's like
like,
very real fear and threats and, um, and then a system had to be created to uphold this idea of whiteness, which doesn't even benefit the majority of the people who, are so attached to this idea and will die for it and will fight anybody for it and are these extreme, racist people. Um, the same ones who think they have authority that like they're watching over everything,
yeah,
watching you from Alaska in Russia trying to see what you're doing over there because they got to know
yeah,
to
no,
preserve this so they're not extinct in their minds.
and I see them as like warriors for this like this system of racism that exists here. All like they're like the perfect example and they're kind of like the surrogates of it and they maintain the status quo through all these accounts you see. Like things that to me don't even make sense like getting involved in some of these discussions that they get involved with or these situations. It doesn't make sense. It's like illogical what they do. Um but I think that also another example we talked about was Megan McCain. because my God.
Meghan McCain, she is somebody who knows nothing but thinks she knows everything.
I put here the perfect example of white privilege and white entitlement and what's wrong with the United States, because she is my God. Every time I watch
It's
her, I'm
amazing
like,
that
man.
she can't even see her own privilege or like who she is. Like there's no real mirror that's held up to her. You know, she likes to talk about people who aren't qualified or
Yeah.
like that shouldn't be in positions
Or people
that
should
they're
work
in.
hard for money when
Yeah.
she has inherited everything.
But it's like, woman, we know you only because of your dad. Like,
Like,
what do you think is going on here?
I'm just shocked that she's considered like a journal. I mean, use that term very loosely.
Yeah, I mean,
but
Elizabeth Hasselbeck.
but no, but aren't they
also
considered journalists
I
at The
mean,
View? Are they journalists, right? What would be their profession? Talk show host? I don't know what.
I mean,
But like they're journalists, like in that realm of profession, and the amount of misinformation, ignorance, and just like blatant lies that this woman spews on national TV every day is like, I find like the antithesis of white privilege, because nothing she says is factual.
no, it's like.
And then she's like, I know these people.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
I
all
know.
anecdotal,
She goes, I
and
know that.
then that applies to the rest of the
like-
world and everything.
And then she like,
It's like when
she
she-
acts like she's attacked all the time. She's like, are you gonna let me speak?
Yeah.
I was like, bitch, you've been speaking
Yeah,
for 10 minutes.
I know.
It's like,
Whoopi's like, go ahead, girl.
Go ahead. She's like,
Shut up after, please. No, but like when she lied about there being protests outside of her building, and this woman from her building tweeted, "Listen, you're lying." This one, and she was like, "Well, I saw it on the news. I thought you thought it was outside. No, you fucking lied."
That's all it takes. I thought it was true.
So it was.
So it was.
It was, and we're not going to talk about this anymore because
Exactly.
we don't have to.
Exactly.
Because I said it, and it's fine. Like I can just, we're not even going to talk about this. Let's just move on. Let's move forward.
Exactly.
You're so hung up on the past. We can't.
And just the things that she says about like, because one minute she was criticizing Trump and the next minute she's with him and gets it, and like, you have to understand white people, and it's like, do we really have to understand them, really? Because at the end of it, yes, they have economic problems, and there's a lack of access in
I think
rural
white
America.
people have to understand white people.
But I do think, like, at the end of the day, we can talk about all those socioeconomic issues that they do experience.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of it, that's like 20% of it. 80% is racism.
Well,
it's
right.
racism.
This choice, right?
Like, because their go-to is always like, oh, that fucking, immigrant, that rapist, that drug dealer. Meanwhile, their people are doing the same shit. But
everybody's
it's
doing
like,
the same bullshit.
It's like these takers and these fucking Mexicans
well,
and these people.
I think
and
it's
all this.
easier to blame than to actually like try and understand why people are in the position that they're in,
Yeah.
And that's what it does. It'll pit people. I mean, I think it's going to backfire, though, because eventually they will not be the majority. So it's like...
Yeah, I mean, they're not already, right? Like, I mean, if we really...
I mean, yeah, if we really... I mean, globally, of course. I'm talking specifically in this country, and I want... Like, if numbers were actually accurate, then I don't...
Well, they still control everything. They
Well.
control the narratives and the media.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about that, too, with the Meghan Markle, the narratives around her, with the British media and her, like, being angry and
she's
mean.
inherently just bad. We can't like her.
Yeah.
There's no... Like, immediately...
She's, like, innately evil.
Yeah,
because she's
and it's crazy
biracial.
because, I never heard of Meghan Markle before this. I didn't know
I didn't even know she was an American actress.
Yeah, I had no clue. And I would have never known from this. But inherently, she was terrible. The headlines came out. She's straight out of Compton. Just
That's
like the
right.
movie. She's on some hip-hop shit. She's black for real.
Black.
We...
She's not even British black.
How do y'all feel about that? That's what
She's not even British black. She's fucking American
She's black.
Woo,
She's
like-
real. Yeah, no.
That was like... Oof, she's not even Jamaican or
Yeah,
something.
but the
She's
narrative of her being angry, of her being aggressive,
making the sister-in-law
yo,
cry.
yes, well, that's their go-to,
You know, she made her
cry.
cry.
But they're always crocodile tears.
I
And
mean,
those weren't even
did
real
she
tears. It
make her
was,
cry? I feel
no,
like
I
Megan
mean,
cried more than
yeah,
they did.
apparently it was the opposite
Yeah,
situation
of
there.
course.
But,
But even that is so baffling. That whole story, you know,
that would come out as a fucking story,
but
right? That
that
people
they
should
all come in
care and
line.
like
What are you? I just don't understand. What I mean, I'm not British. Like
I
I don't
guess
understand. But what the fuck are you preserving?
I don't know.
Like
The
what?
PR people were like, "This will be great," because they have a great relationship with the press, according to
Yeah, but what are they trying to I just don't understand what they're trying to preserve because
themselves, people in
who looks
power.
at this crown and is like, yeah, they're great people. I mean, I guess there are people that are like that, but
People are obsessed. I
I just
remember at our
don't.
job, like there was a whole like
A party
lunch dedicated
to the
to
marriage.
them getting married, and people being like, "I'm so excited. I'm watching it tonight."
Yeah, I never was into royal anything. I just don't to me I guess it's a
I
foreign
mean,
concept for me.
I think it's just this country's tie to whiteness. Like,
Like it's so
honestly, that preserves
bizarre
it.
and
It
it's
has
so
to be that.
weird and like that whole story how that is even like a fucking media topic
Well,
about not having titles and all these. I mean, it's insane.
I mean, what happened to them is insane. It's not normal. This has never happened. I mean, I'm not going to say it's never happened. I'm sure it's happened. I don't know
We
about it,
don't
but
know.
but
We would
but
never know if it
you
happened in
know,
history.
in modern day, somebody being denied a title, a royal title, simply because they're going to be like a quarter black is
Really, that's true. Yeah, but I think it's many factors. I think it's also that she was Black American.
American, but
Um,
it's the black is all
yeah,
they hear and see, and like that's
because they've
it's
created a
terrible.
hierarchy of Black people too. These white people, you
Well,
know,
of course. I
and
mean,
like the
and we
American
all
Black
abide
is
by
like,
it too.
woof,
It's
that's
so.
like,
I mean, I think
damn.
it's the.
Could we not get an African princess or
It's
something?
a
You know.
bottom of the totem pole as
Hmm.
far as society.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And then there's also situations at work, right? That we've
I
talked
mean,
about
it definitely
these white
plays into
women.
like the average white woman, a place we work. I just thinking they deserve everything, and again going against logic and just like proving themselves wrong all the time. Like I don't know if you remember, there's this woman, um, Kimberly, at our job, and she is one of the rudest people that I've ever met. I mean, like our job has a terrible culture of just like not like people don't. You'll walk into an elevator with somebody and like just scowl at them and like or press
That's
your
true.
button and go up, and just
Very true.
leave and be
Very true.
stank to people. Like ever since I got there, like just horrible. But she really takes the cake because it's like she works on our floor. Like, she's interacted with people we know. Our lunchroom is like kind of a thing.
Hmm.
And she keeps to herself, but she's also like an asshole, like, and
She
not
is.
just like passive about it. Like she'll walk by and be like "fuck you" with her face, never say a word, or like
If her
not
look,
hold
if
open
her
a
looks to
door.
kill,
Yeah, they would. It's
or
like
miserable about everything.
she's
There's,
so
it's
miserable and just the
always
worst.
a life-threatening situation every
Yeah,
day.
she's
Every day
exhausted.
is a
I
life-threatening
mean, she
issue
has
with
kids.
her
She's a mom.
kids.
She's upset.
Like she'd be on call with grantees and be like,
Mm.
"Listen, I need to like."
My kid is 5.
She's like,
I can't.
my babysitter canceled today, so like I know that you need this,
All right.
but I need to figure this shit out right
Yeah.
now, okay? Because
She's
my
the
kids
worst.
are like, their
All
lives are in
overheard
danger.
conversations, not in real life. But there was one time I actually had a conversation with this woman, and I was in the kitchen and I was with a few of our colleagues,
Yeah.
and we were talking about the healthcare system, like, and you know, mortality rates after giving birth. And she walked into the kitchen. She was like, "Oh my God, yeah, I know. Like, I just gave birth." She's just gave birth, and she's like talking about these complications she has. And I'm like, had during her pregnancy and labor, and I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." Like she had to have like an emergency C-section, and I'm like garnering sympathy for this woman. Like, this is fucked up. Like, you never want to hear a story like
course.
this. And even
Well,
though
it's
she's been
dangerous.
rude, I'm like, all right, like, say what you gotta say.
Mm.
And then we started getting into a conversation about like bedside manner and just the care that you and treatment that you get from doctors, because they're smart people. I think there's like often a disconnect, and like also them trying to separate themselves from the emotion
Yeah.
involved with the situation. And she was talking about her doctor, and she was like, yeah, and she was black, and she didn't even, like, you would think that because she was African American that she would know
She would
like
know
what I was
suffering.
going
She would
through.
understand
And
pain and
she was
heartache.
rude to me, and like, she should know as a black woman. And she kept repeating this,
In front of
yeah,
other
and it's
black
in front of
women.
a black woman, myself, and
A few
two other
others.
women included, who decided to respond to her. My initial reaction was
Fuck you.
blank and fuck you. Now I'm pissed off. Like, so they're suffering, but you're still gonna try and blame. Even though also we like considering where we work, most people are aware where we work, and I think, does she work in public health? No,
No,
she's in human rights, I think, or
human rights. Yeah, I think, or
Or,
she and
anyway, I don't work in any of these spaces, but I do know that black women die at much higher rates,
yeah,
disproportional rates to
disproportionate.
to other women in this country when it
For sure.
when giving birth, or people who can get pregnant who are black. Um, and for her to say this, it's just like solidifies the space that they occupy. Like, you have to be aware of certain things, and again, I like, she's not aware of this fact, or I mean, about this country. It's just she doesn't give a fuck, and it was her. She was in pain. She
That's
had it to
right.
be treated.
That's right. It's always about that. They don't care about anything until it happens to them, and then we have to change the
Well,
laws. We have
yeah.
to do everything.
Now it's a problem that the healthcare system is fucked up. That
Yeah.
because she went through it.
Yeah, that's true.
No mention of the statistics and facts that we just spoke
No, 'cause
about. Like,
she's
it's irrelevant.
she's
It's her.
feeling it. She's
She
feeling
went
it.
through it, so that's all. That's all that matters. But yeah, like, there are other people like this, where we work.
No, so you were talking about Kimberly, but this woman also works with us. I won't say her name, but she works with us, and she, to me, is one of the most out of touch people, and like she's the antithesis of this self-identified liberal, but is not a liberal at all. And
I mean, her husband reads Breitbart.
yeah, I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
even just talking to her and hearing her conversations, like, cause she sits near me, or she sat near me, before, she sat near me, um, just out of touch, like the conversations. Like I was telling you one time, she was like, I was eavesdropping on this conversation. She was talking to two other white colleagues, and she was like, that she was in distress because everything with her child is in distress because only white women have babies, and they the only ones that struggle, and
Yeah,
like it's not like a
especially
thing.
hard for them because
Yeah,
they
it's
don't
like
have babysitters.
it's like
Especially-
they the only ones that know what suffering is when it comes to children, and they the only ones that know anything. And she was like bitching about like her getting into an argument with her dad because like they weren't gonna let the baby go yachting this summer, and it's like
That's really hard. I hate when my baby can't go.
yeah, she's like, and that's like our family tradition, and like we go yachting,
crazy.
and they're not gonna let my baby on board. Like, what is that? And in my head, I'm like, what the fuck? What kind of conversation is this?
Yeah.
But yeah, she has made some outlandish comments all the time. I mean, that was one of them. That she wanted a cultured, she wanted her baby to be cultured, so we got a Guyanese nanny. This story now that she's, this guy, this warrior for the Guyanese
Yeah.
community.
She's
to get
getting her
vaccinated.
nanny and her nanny's friends
Ugh, she
vaccinated, getting them information on
she
how to
is
do
a
it. So she
hero.
got to let us know she's an ally for the cause.
She is.
She's trying to,
She is. She is. She also
help decrease cases from COVID,
Yeah.
especially within the BIPOC community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's her job.
She also mentioned
So,
that Trump being reelected was gonna affect her personally.
Yeah.
Like it was like an attack on her if
Her
Trump
rights,
was reelected. A rich white woman from
I really would
the
love to know
South.
how she voted.
I think she voted. I think she would vote for Biden because
Mhm.
she's one of those like centrist Democrats. You know,
I
they're
mean, she has some radical thoughts in our meetings.
what
I don't-
do share because I'm not in these
I'm
meetings.
totally joking. She's just an ally. She's there. She's on the front lines. You know, her and her baby hand out lit
Yeah, of
on the
course.
street
I
for
mean, she lives in
candidates that they
Park
support.
Slope. I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
and they're. I mean, this is true democracy.
Yeah, like she is. But I think she's like a centrist, the centrist Democrats who are
Mm.
racist themselves. I mean, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, these people are
Trash.
racist. These people are racist. I
Trash.
mean, talk to Michelle Obama about
Mm.
how she was too aggressive
Mm.
talking. 2 Ivy League degrees.
Yeah, I know.
She's too aggressive talking. Trump is that's acceptable. That's digestible in
Mm-hmm.
American politics. Michelle Obama, a black woman with 2 Ivy League degrees, talking about nutrition. White people aren't ready for that in America. They're ready for that. So I think she fits into that. You know, to me, she also, this person from work plays into like this antithesis white woman complex, because also in the space that we work, these white women have this like entitlement that they're the woke ones and they're the
Yeah.
ones like, oh, you don't have to tell me. I
I've
know.
been through it.
I know. Like
Yeah.
I know. I've been to these places. I've seen poverty. Like all these things.
Yeah, but
And
they
I
can't see it here. I love when people are like, "Yeah, I had
Of
to go to
course.
a, I had to
Of
go to a
course.
third world
They had that in
country.
the
I can't believe
office.
people don't have
Remember the guy talking about going to Peru, and that's when he saw
real
true
poverty."
poverty when I was in Peru. Like,
Mm.
oh, how poor people are. It's like
Meanwhile, how's the drinking water here?
exactly. I said, let's go to Flint where people are drinking fucking lead.
Mm.
Like, come on. Like,
I
let's.
mean, we could go outside and find a local homeless person. Like,
What? We could go to the
it's
projects where
yeah,
there's lead-based paint and people don't have heat in the
yeah.
winter in New York
No
City.
heat, having to use
Like
ovens
it's
or
like
yeah,
and I tell I get
or
into this
living with mold.
I get into this argument all the time with people from Latin America about like I'm American, I probably don't know real poverty. And that's not true. America hides it better because it's part of our brand
Yeah.
to be this capitalist like whale of wealth and resources, but poverty exists here just as it exists there. Yes, we don't live in shanty towns and have like aluminum houses,
Yeah,
right?
but we have tents on fucking Skid Row and people
Exactly.
are,
We do, but we also have projects that it looks nice on the outside, but inside there's mold and there's lead and people don't have hot water and people don't have
rats are
electricity.
just like vermin and just horrible living
Exactly.
conditions. Nobody should have to live
But
this way.
that's
Or
what I'm
people,
saying. I'm saying it's just America has hid its poverty, but poverty is a real thing when people can't afford a $500 plane ticket, when most Americans live under 24,000 or under a
yeah.
year. Like this
When
is
40K is living good.
exactly. So like that's what like and that's part of the disconnect in what America's international propaganda, because I think the US has propaganda internally that they, for us as citizens, but then there's also propaganda in the international community where people come here and think we're all fucking rich and all like millionaires.
Yeah, but I think that is breaking down. I think
I mean,
that
Trump
Trump,
definitely,
yeah,
but it's still there because when you talk to people from Latin America, that's something that is always a thing. Oh, well, yeah, at least it's not poverty like here. And yes, in Latin America, people live in fucking shacks. That is true with no electricity. That exists. What I'm saying is that exists here in a different lens.
yeah,
It exists, and that's some people's reality. It's the
yeah.
same thing as I tell people. What does it matter if our GDP is always growing, right? If black and brown people don't have access to home ownership, don't have access to loans. You
Hmm.
go to a bank and they're discriminating against you based on your last name, how you look, what education you have. So it exists here. It's just we've packaged it better because it's more insidious, the racism here.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You got to break those down and you got to get international people too to see that this country's full of shit and that this country only benefits a certain group of people. And it does benefit some black and Latin people, but it's those people who conform or are complacent or just, shut up and make your money and don't be too adversarial.
Hmm.
So like that's the interesting that's the interesting concept here, and I think like white women are a big part of that in this country, you know? And
Well, yeah, they help to hide it because they do, in their position, they could be true allies. They could fight for themselves. They could be on this side.
yeah.
But again, the the wealth, the resources, all of that overrides standing on the side of quote unquote good or with other oppressed people
Yeah,
because they
exactly.
can get away with it
Yeah.
because of their race specifically.
And their place in it. Like they have,
Yep, they
you
do have
know,
it seems like this is their role.
yeah. And they've
This is
been
their
there
role.
since the inception of the country,
Yeah.
since the colonial times. They've been at the right hand of these rich white guys, and they like being there, and they'll never admit it. And not all of them, of course. We're not generalizing that it's all of them,
No.
but this is their role in this country,
Yeah.
and they play a pivotal role in maintaining the racial status in this country and the racism that exists in this country. They do, and
And it
it's
has to be an active role that they take in order to change anything.
yeah,
Otherwise, the needle won't move because the system works in a way that almost seems passive but is very active. It's just a
yeah,
it's
and
just a well-oiled
that's what
machine.
I'm
Yeah, and
exactly, and that's
exactly like you said,
exactly what
you
I'm
you can't,
saying.
or to the outside eye, you can't see it, but it works,
Yeah,
and we're all playing a part in it, even if we're not all, saying the N word. Like
exactly,
that's not how it works. You don't need
exactly,
something like blatant like that to happen.
and
But
that's
it's like,
exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, exactly. The areas where you don't have access to basic human rights that other people may think that we all have, but it's not. It's not the
Or
case
just how
here.
your experience is here and the
That too.
access you have, because again they also equate, and I'm talking about people, you know, from the global south. When you talk to people about poverty and
Mhm.
racism, because it is very different, it is, I agree, it
Mhm.
is, but in this country we're more civilized about it, but it exists here every day for people.
Yeah.
And everything you do, no matter what education you have, when you're in New York looking for an apartment, like I've noticed
Mhm.
myself taking my last name out.
Changes a game changer.
And people, I just put my first name and I get more responses than putting my
Mhm.
last name. Like this is it's insidious and it's
Mhm.
in the system. And
Mhm.
that's one thing that I think has made the US last so long, is that I think the US is a great marketer.
Yeah.
And marketing is its number one
Well, yeah,
superpower.
from the jump, come here, start a new life, do this new
Exactly.
thing, and then it's like
Exactly.
it's still this. People still view it as this land of
Exactly.
opportunity, but
To a certain group of
to a
people.
certain group of people, and then people don't realize how much race plays into this, and how much color plays into this,
Yeah.
and how you're perceived, and then that affecting what you can then
But
access and go forward.
also a contract for these white immigrants that come here.
Mm.
They reinvent their race because
Mm.
at home in their home in Europe,
Yeah, they
they're
identify
like
as.
at the bottom of the totem
Mm,
pole. Then they come here and they're American white and they're at the top again, and then discriminating against others. And
mm,
that's a big fact on the history of Italian Americans, of Irish
Irish.
Americans, Polish, any Eastern European. Like this is it. Armenian, like all these places come here and they're able to oppress other people, and
Mm-hmm.
they reinvent themselves and they have
Well, it's that
access to things.
race
Their
to the
race
top.
change.
It's the race to the top too, like to get closer to the epitome of
Yeah,
of whiteness.
exactly. Well, yeah, American whiteness,
Yeah.
because
Well,
back
I
at
mean,
yeah,
it's all a lie at the
yeah.
end of the day. But yes,
But I think it's different in Europe, because
I
I do
agree.
think Europe, it's like, because again, it's like it's like the warehouse of white people.
Not warehouse.
It's like their headquarters.
They make them
It's
at.
That's where they're made, Europe. So I think it's more like race is even more identified by language and history and stuff, and they have
Mm-hmm.
their own weird racial
Hierarchy.
caste system that goes on there. But I think that's significant here. Like these immigrants that 3 or 4 generations ago were discriminated here,
Mm.
Italians, Irish, right? But they assimilate into
Yeah.
this country and they become white, or what American white, whatever that is, and then they oppress
Yeah.
and they
But
become
it's not far off from the origin. Like, it's
yeah,
very hard for me like to separate the two. Because it's like if that's your origin and then you come here and then assimilate to what I
yeah.
guess, you know.
But I do, I
I
what
know there's a difference. I
yeah,
do. I do. I do note that, understand that, but it's still like it's still hard for me to
yeah. No, and I think
accept.
that's why racism is
Yeah.
hard to end in this country. It's
Mm.
because it's so embedded in everything
Mm.
here that it's hard to separate things. But I do think that's very fascinating in this country, that you can come, like, that white people are able to come here and reinvent themselves
Mhm.
and become the oppressor, where they were the oppressed in
Mhm.
Europe. They've become part of the oppressor class,
Yeah. Well, just like our topic, white women.
Exactly. And that's why I'm talking about this, because I
Yeah.
think white women play a pivotal role in this racialization that exists in this country, that continues to perpetuate in this country. I think white women have a key role in that. And I do think that white women are easier to change, I think, like if we
Than
talk
white
about it,
men.
than the white men.
Of
Like
course.
they're not going to give up
Yeah.
power without violence, because that's how they've gotten power.
Well, yeah.
They've gotten their power through violence, and the only way they're going to give up their power is through violence.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been taught through slavery and colonization to be submissive and to be complacent in it. But when people have had enough, as
They will
as
fight.
history talks about, like, oh, the slaves were just happy being slaves,
No.
and they revolted every fucking day and everywhere. They were revolting every day, and because enough is enough. And after enough is enough, countries became independent, and most countries in Latin America became independent through their slaves. Their
Yeah.
slaves were a part of their resistance, and that is, I think, like, so I do think that white women are easier to get to, and like could change in a way if we discuss it more or educate people more. I don't think white men will change unless their power is taken from them. They're not going to give it up willingly. But I could see white women being more allies with us.
Yeah.
But I do think like they play a pivotal role in keeping this racial
Alive.
whatever
and
it is
keep
in
going.
the US, it keeps it alive. And that's why I think it's important, this topic, and also to talk about white women's role, because I do think they produce harm, and it's hard to talk about it with white women because they also are oppressed
Absolutely.
in their way.
Yeah, but
It's
being
very
women,
different,
you know.
but it's hard to talk about them being the oppressor in certain ways, but then also they are also oppressed.
Absolutely, because
by-
they can switch sides
Exactly.
and align with.
And then you have men, like a lot of white men, like I think Trump is the prototype of this American rich white guy. And like, I mean,
Epitome of mediocrity.
rich, I use that term loosely because
Well,
clearly,
yeah, I know.
as Letitia James is finding out, he's broke.
As the record show.
But he's rich. We'll say he's rich,
Yeah.
very, very rich, super rich.
He's a fucking thief. So.
But they all are, though.
Yeah.
I mean, they all are. It's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, that's another topic. This is part of the legacy.
It's all like,
you know.
I try to get into the stock market, and I'm like, this is just like gamble. Like, there's no, I
horrible.
don't understand what the fuck's going on. But maybe that's just my little Caribbean brain. I don't know. I just don't
You can't
understand.
think that
I just
far.
can't think that well. I don't have enough European blood in me. But I think like people like Trump, white women are oppressed by them. Like all the things he was saying, like, and that exists, and I don't want to discredit that by criticizing them, but I also think that they focus on that and completely negate their complacency.
Well, yeah,
in the
it's
system.
easier.
Yeah.
It's way easier.
So that's the challenge with dealing with them. But I do think that they're pivotal, and they have a pivotal role in this country that we live in, and this race society that we have. They are a pivotal role in it, and I think you see it in that you have Becky's and Karen's. That this is even a pop culture terminology.
Yeah, that other
shows you that this is a problem
It
here.
is, and that people. I think people are realizing it and
Yeah.
realizing their privilege and the fact that they do have like a.
But are they
a little-
really? Because they fire them, and then okay.
Oh well,
and
I
then,
mean,
like,
we're not talking the bird watching Karen, whatever. She's a different one because now she's suing for discrimination. She is like, went and called the cops on this black man for watching birds in fucking Central Park, and now she lost her job after that, and I forgot what kind of suit was against her.
And now she's suing her company.
Her job, yeah, for firing her.
Why?
Her ex job.
Well, what's the discrimination?
It's discrimination against her because
She's white and a woman.
but she's a woman, and she
She's
was,
white. And
she
she was in distress.
she was scared of a black man watching birds in the park, and they shouldn't have fired her for that.
Yeah.
Hello.
If he was watching birds too, I don't know. He was
Yeah,
in,
I mean, I think he was doing something else with his binoculars.
I mean,
and
he
looking
was
at
in
trees.
he was in the historical gay part of Central Park where they cruise. So I don't know if he was.
Oh,
really
I
bird.
didn't even know
I know
that.
that's something that. That's something
Well,
queer folk and LGBTQ people are like,
have been pointing out about this story.
Were you really bird
What
watching,
were you
or
doing
were
here?
you like?
Well,
Whatever?
either way,
She's a bitch.
You're right. She's a fucking asshole. She should have been minding her own motherfucking business and not doing this shit. But yeah, no, you're right. They definitely do have a role to play in this country, and this ideal of us becoming anti-racist. Hopefully, that is the goal, right?
Yeah. But it's an active
absolutely
thing.
For all of us to actively work against this system that is so ingrained in all of us.
And I think they're a good example of that. And I think that's why, it's like an everyday action to be anti-racist and to really put a racial lens to everything, because in this country everything has a racial lens. There's not anything in this country that doesn't happen that's not motivated by racism. So that's why I think white women are a good example of that, and we need to push them more, and hopefully this does change. But I mean, I don't know, because they all get fired, and it's like, okay, this happens, but they all think this. It's just they got caught on camera. But
well, it's not. I don't even know if it's those ones. Like, we're not counting on the Karens to change their minds, or to help shift the narrative, and change society to becoming anti-racist. It's not them. It's just calling out those people, and white people being like, yeah, let's fucking call out this person for doing this shit. Like, that's what we have to keep doing, and that's what their role will be, because also it's understanding that you shouldn't be centered in this fight, because it's not you being oppressed, but understanding your role and the power that you do have to affect change and work towards balancing the scales.
Yeah, no, and it's important to have the dialogue and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it can't be whitewashed.
And
a lot of things are whitewashed here. So I think
100%. Again, why their voices can't be, they're not the center of it. And that's part of them learning and accepting anti-racism. I think we just want to promote a book, so we're just going to do a quick promo of How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Sounds like what it is.
Yeah.
I think he goes through his his life and his experiences in
Maryland.
In Maryland, and actually understanding the role that he even plays, even as a black man, in perpetuating racism in this country. So we just want to promote that and offer this to all. I think a good read. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good read because, again, what we were just talking about, that in this country and in any Western country, or when we talk about anything and how we're taught, there's a racial motivation there. So this book talks about how even as people of color, you have to actively be anti-racist and actively put a racial lens to everything that we're seeing, that we're put in our propaganda. Everything that we see in this country, we have to see it from a racial lens, because everything has a racial lens. And that's what the book talks about. And he also talks about his experience being from Maryland, and what he has experienced in life, and how he had his own awakening and being like, oh my God, I too have
played into
it, because again, it's a brainwash, because since you're in kindergarten, the way they teach us history, the way they teach us everything about this country, the freedom, all these things, racism plays a role. So I think it's a really good read if you really want to get involved in this anti-racism field, and really want to help promote anti-racist practice and really transform this country into a country that's equitable, a country that's inclusive of all people and diverse. So that's why we thought it would be an interesting book, and it played into this topic.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We didn't say
welcome to our episode.
Yeah. Well, we could do that.
Okay. I have to use the restroom.
Yeah, me too. That went on for a while.